It is our Faces, Voices, and Writers segments on Kansas Sports Chatter, an opportunity with so many great media personalities throughout the state just to get to know them a little bit better. Today's guest is the voice of the Fort Hays State University Tigers, Gerard Wellbrock, and also with Eagle Media in Hays. All right, I have a pretty good guess, but like how many years have you been doing Fort Hays football and basketball and just calling Tiger games?
This is my, I believe, 24th season doing play-by-play. And then I was a color analyst for 6 seasons when Steve Webster was the voice. So 30th season overall with the Tigers. There's a little stretch in there. I didn't do anything for about 3-4 years. But yeah, 30th season overall, 24th as the play-by-play voice. Getting
All
old,
right.
Cole.
All right, you got 3 decades. We're not gonna talk about that at all, even though you have 3 decades of experience. I brought you on here because I want to talk some Phillipsburg Panthers. So you got started out calling Phillipsburg games. What was that experience like, and how'd that job come about?
Well, when I was in college, I got Lance Lippert was one of my instructors at Fort Hays State, who had worked at Phillipsburg, knew Tad Feltz. And I started out by doing a Fort Hays State segment on their hour-long scoreboard show. So I would interview the Fort Hays State basketball coaches, football coaches, give an update on Fort Hays State athletics, and they would air it on their Friday night scoreboard show as just some filler time so they could track down some scores. And then I did that for a year and then graduated. They had an opening. So because I had that relationship and Tad apparently liked me, they hired me full time. And I did a 6-day-a-week, 6-hour morning board shift, the morning show host on KKAN and KQMA, and did the Phillipsburg Panther games for 2 seasons. Great experience, a lot of fun. Phillipsburg wasn't really good then, but you could see as I was getting ready to leave, when I got the opportunity to come back to Hays, they were going to be good. I think they went 7-2 the next 2 years in football. Randall Zimmerman took over as the head coach now at Junction City. So it was a fun time. I run into Jack Dressler, who was the athletic director occasionally. He's now retired. And I remember his son Jason played. He's a good quarterback and basketball player. Todd Powell, I actually spoke at an event for one of the local organizations, and he brought up the fact that I must have made a comment about his shooting at one point off the game film, which I'd forgotten about, but remembered once he did it, and he was on the team. He's an attorney now in Hays, so it's kind of funny to run into some of those people who were on those early days teams when I first got started. But yeah, fun time in Phillipsburg, and obviously working with Tad was awesome.
All right, continue on that thought. Tad Phillips, I mean, I think anyone, especially in Northwest Kansas, but even throughout the state in broadcasting, knows that name. What was it like working with Tad?
It was awesome. He's a Hall of Famer. He's in the Kansas Association of Broadcasting Hall of Fame. Certainly well deserving. I remember I got the job. I started like in August, and the first thing he said is, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be gone for the next week." He was on one of his many trips to D.C. or New York, with chaperoning student groups. He worked that out. It was a good move on his part. He got to go to those places about every year. Just learned so much. But I was on his Tadpole show, which I think is wrapping up. He's finally going to have to hang that up. Due to some health issues. He's like 93. I mean, hope we could all have as much success and still be as active as he is at that age. But what I told him was, the games, yeah, whatever, and the experience and the work and cutting your teeth, so to speak, in your first job. I just remembered we would go to for state track. That was probably what stands out. We'd cover state track. And then we would go to some just hole in the wall places to eat. And I didn't know if we're even going to get out alive, and then realize this is this is the best food I've ever had. He knew all the holes in the wall and all the dives and places to go to eat everywhere. So we always ate well. I will always remember that. And kind of like, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't always judge some of those places by the way they look outside, because you get in there and the food is unbelievable. So that's what I will always remember most about Tad.
So now, have you carried over his ability to find those great places into your MIAA days? Like when you're going to Joplin, are you looking for the best place to eat?
Yeah, but I'm probably not as good. I'm probably still not as trustworthy. And a lot of times, like for football, unfortunately, you try to get back. You want to get done. You don't. So you just go with the. So we always make the rule something not in Hays. So we try to adhere to that, but it's usually not the hole in the wall place. Although there are a few places, especially in basketball, when you might be spending the night. you get a tip from the other broadcaster of places to go. So always willing to try, but got to be careful too. You don't want to have something that doesn't, you know how that goes. You can't mess up the stomach the night
Yeah,
before or day of a game. So you got to be a little careful.
it's a fine line you got to walk. So you being a Victoria guy, and back in that day in the MCL, did you feel like a traitor, like covering Phillipsburg, being a Victoria guy?
It was interesting when they played. I don't think they played them in football, but my sister was on the basketball team, so that was a little odd. Calling her game as the voice of the Panthers when they're playing Victoria, and they had some pretty good teams, so that was a little different. I was able to separate. I mean, maybe deep down I was rooting for the Knights a little bit, but I was able to separate that and stay professional.
Well, being from Victoria and now, like you said, all the experience that you've had in the decades of calling Fort Hays games, how much fun has that been for you? I mean, being play-by-play broadcaster is fun in itself, but almost like your hometown team, Gerard.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, being, like I said, growing up from Victoria, I grew up listening to Fort Hays State games. Bob Davis was one of my heroes, and probably one of the reasons I'm doing what I do. We would listen to the Royals in the summertime. My parents, we always had the radio on doing stuff outside, and the Royals were on with Fred and Denny, and then Fort Hays State games were on with Bob Davis, and that's just I fell in love with it. And that's one of the reasons I do what I do, because of influences like that. And it is pretty cool. When I was in grade school and then getting into high school, Fort Hays State, especially basketball, was rolling. Those were the national championship years with Coach Bill Morse, and they were, drawing 6,000 people to games, and it was big time. And so to be able to call those games now is still pretty cool. Obviously, things have changed in the sports world. The crowds aren't that big, but Fort Hays State's still among the leaders in attendance every year. Football's been phenomenal this year, so it is pretty cool. And it's like any of these jobs that I don't take it lightly when you look at the people who've sat in my chair ahead of me and just trying to do a good job and kind of honor all the guys who've done it before me, because they were all such outstanding broadcasters. Just try to carry on that tradition.
Yeah, definitely been able to accomplish that. I mean, for you, this is going to be a tough question because you've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of players covering Fort Hays over the years. But some of your favorite Kansas athletes, so people that were from Kansas that went on to compete at FHSU.
Wow, that's a good one. And I'm going to probably leave people out.
Sure.
And probably be more recent because, as you get older, you forget some of the early ones. Miles Menges stands out from football, and he just recently graduated. Just a super dude from played at Central Plains and was just such a good defensive end and linebacker. And I think you're seeing his presence not being there a little bit. He was such a great team leader and just kept them loose and playing to their full potential. So he's one who will always stand out. Just a super young man as well. Always polite when you run into him, but always enjoyed him. I think Hays High's coach Tony Crow. He was one of the players when I took over for Steve doing play-by-play on those first teams, and he was phenomenal. And then to see what he's doing at Hays High now is really, really cool. And it's always fun to run into him and know that he was in that group. I go back to even when I was doing color with Steve. Clint Bedore from Stockton was an incredible running back. He's in the Tiger Sports Hall of Fame. And Fort Hays State's first two Division II playoff runs in '93 and '95, he was the running back. And here's this kid from Stockton, Kansas. And then you'd see game film, and it's like, man, he is quicker and has better footwork than you even imagine and think you see live. And I think Dustin Damel from Hoisington was on some good teams, and he's just a character. He was just a fun guy to be around. Basketball. Craig Nicholson, it was incredible. His time here, and unfortunately had a really bad ankle injury that kind of hampered his career, which was still incredible. But it'd been fun if he would to see what he would have done had he not gotten injured. Recently, Caleb Hammocky from Hutch Trinity. I mean, Fort Hays State's going to find out life without Caleb this year. When he's been in the program 6 years, 5 years starting point guard with COVID.
Yeah, he's your age, right?
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, but I mean, one of the, I think, he's their all-time leading scorer. And yes, there's an asterisk because he had an extra year, but he would be in the top 10 in a lot of those categories without the extra year. And I think he goes down as one of Fort Hays State's all-time greatest basketball players, and so many more that I'm sure I'm leaving out. But those are the ones that come around. There's been a lot of them, and that's what's neat about Coach Chris Brown. I think he does a good job of getting the talent in this part of the state that can play here and still be successful and have a top tier program in the MIAA, because it's tough. It's a brutal league, and sometimes being out in Hays, Kansas, it's hard to get some of the talent you need to compete. But he does a good job, I think, of getting the Western Kansas kids, Central Kansas kids to come here by and large, and that's your base and your foundation. Mark Johnson's done the same thing. He's had a lot. I mean, they got Tim Poitner from Scott City, and Kite and some of those other guys. I mean, you just go up and down the line. There's been a lot of Scott City kids. Corbin Kunsch, who's done a good job of getting those kids in this part of the state to stay at home, and they've all seemed to thrive. Hadley Gillum from Plainville, walk on. Never would have thought he'd play a minute for Fort Hays State. He becomes a first-team all-conference guy and was just unbelievable.
Gerard, appreciate the time, and we'll let you brace yourself for the crossover month, all right?
Yeah, it starts next week already. It kind of hit me on Tuesday. I better get ready for basketball.
Good idea. Gerard, appreciate it.
Hey, always good to see you. Always good to be on with you, Cole. Love your show. You're doing a great job.
Hey, thank you, sir. It means a lot. That's Gerard Wellbrock, voice of the FHSU Tigers. That'll do it for our faces, voices, and riders.